How bad things have to go so that the 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton says publicly that his car simply has no rhythm? Today we explore the true meaning of his most shocking statements of the year. Is your adventure with Ferrari in crisis? The 2025 Austria Grand Prix did not start conventionally for Ferrari, much less for Lewis Hamilton. From the start of the weekend, the atmosphere in the Red Garage was of contained restlessness. The Red Bull Ring is a short, but extremely technical circuit, with high-speed curves that demand surgical precision in the balance of the car. It is a path that does not forgive aerodynamic errors or suboptimal configurations. And precisely there the storm began to take shape. During the second free training session, Hamilton delivered a radio phrase that resonated as a shot in the paddock. "For some reason I just have no rhythm, companion." That apparently simple statement was the echo of an internal accumulation process. It wasn't just a technical complaint. It was the raw verbalization of a deep frustration, accumulated since its adaptation to SF25 began. The cameras captured the moment. The tone was not of explosive anger, but of genuine disappointment. Hamilton, a pilot known for his self-control and diplomacy even in adverse situations, was vulnerable live. It is not usual to listen to such an experienced world champion without nuances that he does not understand why he cannot go fast. That generated an immediate effect. The comment was viralized, first among fans, then in the media, and finally, among the engineers who analyzed it in real time. These types of statements do not arise. Lewis arrived in Austria carrying a context. The beginning of his new stage with Ferrari has not been simple. Despite the initial enthusiasm, the historical symbolism of its signing, and the promises of technical evolution that were dragged since the end of 2024, the car does not respond as expected. And the most disturbing thing is that he begins to verbalize him publicly. Before the weekend, I had already warned with unusual sincerity, they do not expect much change. Hopefully we will find something we did not expect, but again we really do not know, so we will discover it tomorrow. In other words, Hamilton did not fully trust the improvements. And I said it before even sitting in the car for a quick lap. This realistic, almost resigned attitude is unusual in it, and highlights an erosion of trust that could be symptomatic of something deeper. The emotional context also counts. Hamilton is not only trying to perform on the track. He is trying to demonstrate that his jump to Ferrari was a successful decision, which did not arrive in Maranello just to close his career nostalgia, but to build a new legacy. But when the car does not even allow it to fight for the head stalls, and when each session becomes a patience test, the pressure intensifies brutally. Not only for him, but for his entire technical environment. Those words by radio were more than an isolated comment. They were a message, a shout of alert. A first symptom that the Hamilton-Ferrari relationship is not only under construction, but also under tension. Because when a pilot of his size says he has no rhythm, he is talking about more than speed. He is saying that he does not feel the car, that there is no connection, and that even talent is not enough to compensate for it. This is not simply a bad batch of training. It is a narrative that can define the tone of the rest of the season. And for Hamilton, which came from complex years in Mercedes, repeating frustration in a different environment could be emotionally devastating if it is not reversed soon. Austria, in that sense, has been a brutal mirror. One in which, for the first time, doubts are reflected that many thought that Hamilton did not bring in his suitcase when he signed with Ferrari. Hamilton's frustration did not arise from a subjective perception or a bad day behind the wheel. It has very specific technical foundations. Ferrari arrived at the Austria Grand Prix with what, on paper, should be his most ambitious update package of the whole season until that moment. After weeks of preparation and analysis post-brain, Maranello engineers decided to completely redesign one of the most critical areas of the car, the floor. A modification of this type is not trivial. It is a structural reconfiguration of the aerodynamic behavior of the car, which directly affects how it interacts with the track in each curve, in each braking, in each transition. This new soil was accompanied by a redesign in the diffuser, a change in front aerodynamic fences, and an integral readjustment in the distribution of the volume under the car. In technical language, this translates into a clear intention to increase the vorticity generated in the lower airflow, seeking an increase in aerodynamic load without compromising longitudinal stability. The theory was promising: more curve load, better traction in exit, and a more stable car along its operational range. But the practice was another completely different story. From the first laps in Austria, it was clear that something did not work. The charging gain promised by simulations did not translate into track. The SF25 continued to show chronic instability on the rear axle under braking, An unpredictability at medium speed that not only compromised the rhythm by return, but made it very difficult to find an adequate setting window. The problem lies in a key concept: the management height. Ferrari designed this car to operate at certain heights that maximize the efficiency of its flat bottom and diffuser. But in the reality of the asphalt, those heights are simply not sustainable. The car begins to lose performance or even touch the ground aggressively, which forces the team to raise it, sacrificing a good part of the soil effect that is essential for its competitiveness. This generates a vicious circle where the car, even being theoretically efficient, cannot be used as conceived. In the midst of this technical scenario, Hamilton is caught. You cannot trust a car that reacts different curve after curve, stint after stint. And that lack of trust, for a pilot who bases his style on the fine control of the rear axle and the precision at the curve entrance, is devastating. Even their enormous experience and adaptation capacity have a limit when the machine under it behaves erratically. Another key technical detail: changes in the fences of the soil introduced to generate additional vorticity did not seem to function in a coherent way with the rest of the package. What should have been a controlled flow that will feed the diffuser air ended generating unwanted turbulence, affecting fast curve stability. The result is a hard-to-predict car, very sensitive to the side wind and the state of the track. All this helps to understand why Hamilton, instead of showing a passionate reaction, opted for a tone of resignation. His words were not those of someone annoying with his team. They were those of a pilot who perfectly understands the technical level of the problem and knows that it is not solved in a couple of sessions. It is not a matter of changing a spoiler or adjusting the changer. It is a design dilemma, a fundamental incompatibility between the theoretical potential of the car and its real application. And that is the real reason why his statements impacted so much. It was not what he said, but what they implied. That neither he nor his engineer, nor the entire team seemed to have clear answers. That the car is an unknown. And that when a world champion does not understand his machine, the entire project enters the danger zone. The message left by Austria transcends the technical aspect. Hamilton's words and his tone were the clearest sign that Ferrari's situation is not only measured in tenths by return, but in confidence, expectations, and internal narratives that stagger. When a figure like Lewis Hamilton shows doubts so public, the expansive wave feels beyond the red box. It is projected to the paddock, the media, the fans, and, above all, within the same structure of Ferrari, which now faces a credibility and cohesion dilemma. Internally, these statements have an immediate effect. Engineers are subjected to additional pressure. Not only should they find a technical solution in record time, but also restore the faith of their star pilot in the project. And that is not a minor challenge. Hamilton is not a rookie. He is a champion who has worked with some of the best technical minds of Formula One, and who knows when a problem is superficial and when it is systemic. Its reading is clear. This is not a passenger bump. It is a sign that something in the concept of the car needs to be rethink. This also alters the emotional ecosystem within the team. The illusion and euphoria atmosphere that surrounded its signing begins to blur. The faces tense in the pit wall during the practices, the evasive responses in the post-session interviews, and the increasingly eloquent silence of Charles Leclerc, everything composes a picture that reminds of past seasons of Ferrari where the promises were many, but the scarce results. On a political level, these statements position Hamilton in an awkward role. On the one hand, he is the new team leader, the face that he had to represent the final resurrection of Ferrari. On the other, he is publicly revealing that he does not believe in the material he has. It is not a betrayal, but an exhibition. In an environment like Maranello, where institutional pressure is constant and internal criticism is fierce, these types of situations can climb very fast. In addition, these types of manifestations also have external consequences. The rivals observe. McLaren, Red Bull, Mercedes. Everyone understands that when Hamilton admits weakness, it is because the situation really surpasses it. Rival teams can adjust their strategies knowing that Ferrari is going through a phase of structural uncertainty. Even the pilot market is impacted, because an unstable Ferrari generates doubts for future talents that could be considering their future within the team. And not less important is the narrative factor. The story that Ferrari had been building since the late 2024 was clear. With Hamilton in command and a stronger technical structure, the Italian team would fight for titles again. Austria disarms that story. And he does it in the most brutal way, with facts, with frustration on the track, with a legendary pilot telling the world that he does not know how to find the rhythm. Ferrari's storytelling as a serious aspiring suffers a severe blow. The question now is whether Ferrari can react on time. if there is technical, structural, and mental capacity within the team to reverse this trend. Because it is not just about correcting a badly calibrated floor or refining a diffuser. From Maranello, messages of calm have leaked. There is talk of new simulations, of improvements designed for circuits with different characteristics, of small adjustments that could stabilize the behavior of the SF25. But those promises must become results. The calendar does not expect